All right, so for more on just what the Grassley referral means and what impact it may have on Avenetti, we're joined by Wendy Patrick. She is an attorney and political analyst. Wendy, thank you for being with us. And Wendy, Senator Grassley has made a criminal referral against Swetnik and Avenetti for 3 felonies, ranging from conspiracy to defraud the U.S., making false statements to the Senate, to obstructing a federal investigation. So explain what all of these mean exactly.
Well, it's really, Michelle, it all stems from the same conduct. Remember, that sworn affidavit contains such explosive allegations that really made Swetnik an eyewitness. Michelle, here's why that's important. If she's an eyewitness and she is affirming and swearing to the truth of what she stated in that affidavit, less than a week later, she walked some significant parts of it back in a news interview. Granted, that wasn't under oath, but what does that do? It casts into doubt the veracity of the very important statements that she made under oath. Remember the impact that that sworn statement had. It was so explosive, it basically put the brakes on the investigation. They wanted to, the Democrats were calling for a halt. At the very least, there was a week-long FBI investigation, the use of government resources. It was so significant and the stakes were so high that, Michelle, if anything she said was untrue, and in Grassley's mind and in the mind of many of the GOP senators, that's grounds for, at the very least, an investigation into the conduct.
So what could be the legal repercussions for her here?
Well, one of the results of the investigation could be inconclusive. In other words, perjury is harder to prove than people think. Perjury involves willful, material misrepresentations, not mistakes. But here's the problem for Swetnik. This isn't some cocktail party conversation that maybe was exaggerated or maybe she didn't really remember in the moment. You have to really take the time to think about what this is. Sworn affidavit. This is something she put some thought into. Yeah. She wrote down, probably read and reread. So the ramifications, if perjury was found, that's very significant charges. But the question, Michelle, is will the investigation result in actual criminal charges? Or will, at the end of it, they be just left with, maybe she just went too far and really wasn't sure, and how do we really prove what her intent was? That's the difficulty with a perjury charge.
Well, Wendy, some are questioning whether Grassley should pursue this. Now, he makes the argument that in order to discourage these kind of false statements, that there needs to be action taken, that for the law to work, we can't just brush aside potential violations, that the investigation expended time, resources, and efforts, and that ignoring this kind of behavior will, to quote him, just invite more of it in the future. Does he have a valid point?
He does have a valid point, but one of the things that we have to be careful of is that an investigation is not politically motivated, and that would be what his detractors would say. And it's weighing those balance. It's really a balance of grace and justice. I'll put it that way. Sure, we want to make sure we do everything we can to dissuade anybody, but wouldn't the penalty of perjury and the penalty of a felony charge be enough? And what Grassley would say is not if there's no teeth in that law and if it's never enforced. So it's a delicate balance in deciding whether or not any particular case, and they've got to be judged equally. Nothing can be politically motivated. But that's the balance. That's the tightrope he walks in deciding whether this is the case that has enough merit to go forward and actually have that investigation. And I also want to point out, it is her statements that contradict what she said in the sworn statement. Much ado has been made about other allegations people have made, her ex-boyfriends, former employers. That is not at issue here because anybody can allege anything. But when you have the affiant herself making statements in contradiction, that's where it could cross the line.
Right. Now, I can understand the argument that we need to move on and a new chapter, but can also understand the argument that there needs to be repercussions for that kind of behavior. Wendy, appreciate your analysis as always. Wendy Patrick, thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Michelle.